Hey everybody, this is Doug with Artfully Rogan. Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 3 coolest metal finishes that I use in my shop here. Let's check it out. So the first method I'm going to talk about requires a pure brass brush and fire. I'm using a piece of 14 gauge hot rolled steel. In order to remove the mill scale, I'm using muriatic acid. When working with any chemical, be sure to wear the proper protection. I'm using here a 120 grit sandpaper on a dual action polisher, which is very similar to an orbital sander. I decided to set the steel I want to brass off the table so it heats up a bit quicker. Now, I'm using an oxygen settling torch. However, a propane or MAP gas can also be used. It just takes a little longer to heat the metal. When heating, keep the flame moving. You want to heat the steel evenly and to a point where it just starts to turn a straw color. Once you see the metal start to change in color, start brushing the steel with the brass brush in short strokes. And make sure to brush in the same direction. You want to continue the process until you've achieved the look that you want. Heating the metal, brushing with the brass brush, heating the metal, and brushing, and so on and so forth. As you can see, it's a bit tricky with regards to heating the steel. As long as it doesn't turn blue, personally, I think the darker areas add character to the look. Okay, for method number 2, you're going to need a grinder. I'm using an 80 grit flap wheel, and this is going to help you put some really cool patterns into the steel. Now, you also want to be able to go to your local auto body paint place. We've got one here called Old School Paint. Now, they were able to put a candy apple paint into a can for me. They call it a base coat, clear coat. Now, in my mind, it's the color without the base coat, which makes it nice and clear. Once you spray that on, you're going to need a nice gloss. That's what's going to help it pop. Now for this, I'm actually using a stainless steel. Again, I'm using the dual action polisher with a 120 grit sandpaper. Make sure that you start off the edge of the steel so that you don't gouge into the stainless when you start polishing. Now take the grinder and get creative. You'll kind of get an idea about how much pressure to use depending on the type of steel and patterns that you want to put into the steel. Play around with it, have some fun. Now I'm using acetone. You can use a degreaser or Windex. You just want to clean off any of the residue that's left behind from polishing and grinding. Make sure that you put the piece upright so that you can get a good spray pattern. Now this is just a generic can, but they put the color inside that can. And when you spray onto the piece, start off and end off of the piece. Don't spray directly onto the piece or you're going to get drips. Now I went over this several times to get the color that I wanted. Now here's the secret. High gloss spray. This is what's going to give that color and those textures the pop. And what's really cool is when you move around, it changes. Different lights hit it at different angles. Now here's something else I also did. Put a decal onto a piece of stainless, spray the color, and then peel the decal off. Give it a high gloss, and you've got a really cool looking sign. Okay, method number 3. Now this by far is the most popular method that I use to add finish to my metal in the shop. Just regular white vinegar, stuff you buy right off the shelf. Now if you search online for vinegar, rust, and metal, chances are you're going to find videos that show you how to remove rust with vinegar. I'm going to show you how to use vinegar to create some really cool finishes on metal. So this is just a plain 22 gauge sheet steel, and I'm just spraying the vinegar directly on it. Now this is a mist, so I'm trying to evenly coat the piece of steel with the vinegar. Once you do that, just let it sit. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes. Kind of a cool pattern. Now I also tried some apple cider vinegar. Same exact process. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes. You can see the apple cider vinegar is quite a bit darker than the white vinegar. Now there are some really cool things that you can do with vinegar that I normally do in my shop. Take a piece of steel and go ahead and spray it with the vinegar. Now I've got this set to do streams. I'm shooting across the steel so that all of the lines of vinegar are going in the same direction. Now, place different textures onto the steel. Here I've got expanded metal, a few washers, just to kind of show you an example of what you can do. Now here's the cool part. Cover this up. And make sure that you put pressure onto it. Now, I take variety pieces of steel that I have laying around the shop, and I lay them onto the top piece of steel, which presses everything down in between. After about 5 hours, take off the weights and remove your top piece. You can see how the lines of vinegar are all kind of going in the same direction, and some of the textures were picked up by the expanded metal and the washers. Now you can leave that overnight and it'll get even darker. Now if you want to cover up some of those leftover areas of steel, go back and hit it with a light mist. You can get some really cool patterns, and the longer you leave it, the darker it gets. Patterns that will start to look like pools, and out of the projects like metal letters or even metal doors. I want to take this time to say thank you very much for watching this video. It's greatly appreciated. And thanks to my top Patreon supporters, Barry and Marlene Rush, Funkiss Artistic Creations, and Judy Clothier. We'll see everybody in the next video.